We will now begin our study session for May the 28th. Again, all of our council is present. The first item on our agenda for this meeting is to review the agenda for our Monday meeting. So council, please refer to that document. Currently, I note that there's just one item off of the consent agenda. It's a public hearing on an annexation case. Mr. Brady, is there anything on this agenda that you would like the staff to give us a presentation on?
Mayor, I believe Councilor Luna has a question on item 4C. Is that correct, Councilor Luna? So yeah, so we have some staff here to explain that item. Who wants to? Is that? Oh, okay. We're gonna. The city attorney will answer that question.
Mr. Luna, why don't you go ahead and state your question?
Yeah, so I was wanted to know a little bit more about what that means in terms of the Gila River adjudication, and it's apparently it's had some history in the city of Mesa, and looks like Chandler is no longer going to participate in that process. Tell me exactly what that means, and how does that benefit the city of Mesa? Historically, we've been participating in this, so what does that mean in terms of how we proceed in the future?
Mayor and Councilmember Luna, this is the litigation, and I'll just give you some background, and also on the IGA. This IGA, Scottsdale, a number of years back, was not a member of the IGA, and then they joined in on the, Chandler, and now they're also going, as this amendment points out, they're going to go out of this IGA. The most notable thing about this IGA and this litigation that council's familiar with is the 5-to-4 exchange rate that we have with the GRIC, and so this litigation has been very beneficial to the city of Mesa, and so for us to remain active in this litigation is very important with the other cities. Chandler recently retained in-house someone with water litigation experience, and so they're going to bring that work in-house, and that's why they're not going to be part of this IGA, but they're obviously going to still be active within the litigation.
Great, now I have a better understanding what the GRIC is. I've been hearing it, especially my colleague, Vice Mayor Freeman, and so that makes perfect sense. I just felt that we needed a little bit of historical perspective, especially for those that may not understand what that means. So thank you so much, Jim.
Mayor, thank you. Mayor, Council, item number 5B was considered by the Planning and Zoning Board last night, and they voted 7-0 to recommend approval. We are going to have a presentation ready for you on Wednesday during the study session.
So, Mayor, the item was posted prior to the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. Was it last night?
That was last night.
So we just wanted you to know that on 5B, that item, it was a 7-0?
7-0.
7-0, and we'll brief the council on that item on next Wednesday also.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Thompson.
Yeah, I was going to ask the same thing if we can do a presentation on 5B. I know there was a lot of work done by both the developers, the zoning attorneys, and staff to move this project from where it was at to where it is now. And so I was hoping that we'd get a presentation on that. Jim, on item 5C, there's the word between city council and mayor is or, and I'm kind of thinking we should probably keep that as an and. Since we're a council manager form of government, I don't want to give any single person too much authority over council as a whole. Is there a way that we can make that so that the entire council, including the mayor, come together during a state of emergency to declare, authorize the city manager to suspend enforcement or modify code?
Mayor and council member, yes, we can change that. That's a really good point that I think council should consider. So it's currently written that, and this is the ordinance that in the event of an emergency like we're in right now, that council or the mayor through a proclamation can delegate authority to the city manager to make modifications or to defer enforcement of portions of the city code to mitigate the impact. And so this was, and obviously we went to council about a month ago with that type of, with a resolution to that effect. And this is sort of formalizing that process. And so there's sort of there are sort of two ways you could do this. You could do it through a resolution of council or a proclamation of the mayor, which, you know, council may want that flexibility in the future for the speed of which the proclamation can occur versus a resolution of the council. Or if council prefers, it can be just through a resolution of the council and not through a proclamation. And if that's the desire of council, we'll probably pull this item because I'll have to go through the ordinance and rewrite some portions, and then we can bring it back either on the 8th or after the break, if that's the direction. And so if I could just get some direction from council, if you want it through proclamation, or if you only want it through, if you want it through resolution only, or do you want it through resolution or proclamation?
And I just think it gets the city further and further away from a council manager form of government. And it leaves council out, and not necessarily this council and this mayor, but for any future council and any future mayors. I think it gives too much power to one single person to unilaterally make a decision without consent of a whole.
Well, so Jim, this is the ordinance that allows the city manager to make some modifications to accommodate restaurants, or what's the specific issue that's addressed in this?
Yeah, Mayor, so we came to council about a month ago with a resolution that was specific to sort of restaurants and the ability to authorize the city manager to make modifications for restaurants. This is a change in the code to really formalize that process that we've already utilized. And in that situation, we went to council with a resolution. This ordinance creates the flexibility that it could be either through a resolution or through the proclamation, which we actually saw a number of other cities utilize, actually specifically for that restaurant issue in the last month. And so we put in this ordinance that same sort of flexibility to do either. And I think what Councilmember Thompson's point is that he'd prefer to keep it to just a resolution process like we did with the restaurants in the past and not include the proclamation portion of it. And if that's the desire, we'll pull it for Monday, and I'll make some minor modifications, and we'll maybe introduce on the 8th and adopt when we come back from the break, if that's okay with council. What it takes away is sort of the ability to, in an emergency when there's a need for a very quick response, we would have to we'd end up probably scheduling a special council meeting with a resolution on that special council meeting, as opposed to being able to do it through proclamation. So it eliminates some flexibility, but it increases participation by council.
I guess I have two questions relative to that. Is if we go through the process that's been suggested and pull it and come back and take action on it after the break, does that mean Brady won't be able to make these accommodations for the restaurants until, I think that's really going to prolong the relief that we're trying to get to those business people.
The restaurants we already moved forward with that, and so that's already actually occurred. This is formalizing the process that we already did and putting it within so that's already occurred. So it won't hold up the restaurants.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Luna.
So Jim, historically, how many declarations has previous council done? We're obviously going through a pandemic right now relative to COVID, but how many emergency declarations have occurred within the last 10 years or so?
This is only one. Mayor, council member, this is the only declaration of emergency in the last 10 years. I think only in the last 20 years. I'd have to go back. It's the only one in many, many, many years.
So this isn't a common practice, if you will. This is we're doing this as a result of that pandemic, where these actions haven't been taken by a previous city manager.
Correct. By a previous mayor or city manager or council. Yes, that's correct.
All right. Well, I think it probably is good for the council to weigh in on this so that we know what the will of the council is. I take no offense at the suggestion from Mr. Thompson. I think it's a point well made. I think empowering a mayor to issue a proclamation, is a double-edged sword. It does allow things to happen quickly, but it might be you might have a mayor that's doing something against the will of the council. And so it's a good thing to discuss. And I think we saw that happen in a neighboring community a month or two ago. The mayor took some action. Come to find out, the council didn't support the mayor, and so they took away the mayor's ability to do that. That was awkward, but that's how the system works. If a mayor gets out on his or her skis, and gets ahead of the council. So there is a remedy, I think, in that situation. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Smith. But the question is, do we want to amend the ordinance so that in the future, mayors, have to make sure that they have the support of their council before they make emergency declarations?
Mayor, I think we're not suggesting that the mayor can't continue to do proclamations. This really has the authority, giving the city manager the authority to modify or maybe suspend existing city regulations that are in the code. That's what this is. Really isn't the other proclamations that you have declared would not be affected. It really kind of comes to light as specifically the one when we made a decision to change or allow exceptions for a period of time for the restaurants to build outside of or serve food outside of their premises or out into the parking lot, and to relax certain codes that direction. So it's not the same scenario of every proclamation you've made a decision on. It really has mostly specifically to the ones where we're instructing the city manager to create exceptions for enforcing the regulations.
Okay, so it wouldn't have an impact on declaring an emergency. It would really be limited to specifics like empowering the city manager to make tweaks in city regulations.
Yeah, usually in this case, it has to do with relaxing the regulations that we have on the code. I mean, we're allowing restaurants now much more flexibility to have patio space in a parking lot or outside of their premises that was otherwise delineated in a previous site plan or something like that. So or other codes, and that's really what all that is speaking to is in the future. If we were to do that again, what would be the process for that to happen?
Councilmember Duff.
I have a question on this. Since we're talking about changing code, would it have to be posted, allow a public comment time before council was able to discuss and make a decision on that? Are we going back to our regular protocol of if there's a change, we have to post it, we have to have, wait a couple of weeks, and we come back and meet, and then we make a decision? Or is this something that council would immediately be able to meet and make a decision on without public wait and comment period?
Well, on the resolution aspect, you would still give the notice that you would give for any resolution. So you'd have to still give the notice for the meeting, and there would be the ability to participate in that meeting and before the council voted on the resolution. And realize also the resolution only authorizes the ability to make modifications to the extent that it's intended to mitigate the impact of the emergency. So it's a very narrow and small ability to provide flexibility in the code to mitigate the impact of an emergency.
So the public posting period is just 24 hours? Or is that 2 weeks? What is the waiting period in which it has to be posted and decided upon?
For a resolution, it's 24 hours.
And what would happen if we were on break or it happened the day after a council meeting, we would just hold an emergency council meeting until we're able to pull all of us together?
Yes, that'd be correct. We'd hold a special council meeting.
Would we do that during break, or it would have to be during, not?
No, it doesn't matter. We did it Friday, right, for the mask. It'd be the same thing.
Well, we're not in break either, so I don't know if we're able to.
Break, it's
oversee
just
that.
a scheduling. We could have special council meetings during the break. There's nothing that prevents us from doing that.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Freeman.
Hey, Jim, I guess in lieu of this, I would be more interested in pros and cons of this and citing examples like the mayor indicated to weigh in and make a decision based on some further discussion. But yeah, I'd like to see both sides of the issue, probably in writing or an email from you, from your office.
Okay.
Or in a meeting, just let me know how this is, which way it can go.
We'll pull it, and then I'll send council an email, and then we'll bring it back after the break.
Thank you.
I got one question before we change topic. Hey, Jim, under the current system, does, I'm assuming the mayor can issue the proclamation immediately. There is no 24-hour waiting period. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments on this?
Not on this one.
Okay,
I have a question on item 7A. Just wanted to see if I could get a briefing on this item from staff. And I can do it offline, is fine. I saw this one. I'm not exactly sure what project this is. I just wanted to get a really quick update from staff.
Okay. Would you like us to do it offline, or you want to not?
Yeah, offline's fine.
Okay,
Offline's
great. And Mayor, just so we don't get too far beyond it, we do have a presentation for 4E.
okay, thank you. Why don't we go ahead and have that presentation now then?
Okay, Mr. Jibjaniak is here for that.
Good morning, Mayor, members of council. I have with me J.D. Beatty, who's the project manager for this project here at the Union. And again, we're going to go through a real short presentation. The next slide up here is just an overview of, next one here if we can, there it is just an overview of the entire project that's going on today. Office A in the northeast corner is under construction, along with about 1/3 of that entire easterly parking garage that you see there in the photo. The next slide itself is the site under construction earlier this spring. There were significant rain delays here earlier, and you can see some of the holes that they had to go through to remove some extra trash that they found. But you can see, as Councilmember or Vice Mayor Freeman has the same photo, just this week we celebrated putting the last piece of steel in place. So with today, we want to talk about an amendment to the development agreement. I'm going to let JD cover those items.
Sure, thanks, Bill. Mayor and Council, what we're bringing before you today is the First Amendment to the development agreement, which is essentially looking to change the section related to the utility relocation reimbursement, or also called the reimbursable public improvement costs, or RPIC. Essentially, in the original development agreement, we had city utilities on this site that needed to be relocated in order to make the site developable for the development team. So the city agreed to reimburse a portion of those costs from the sale of the land to Lincoln Property Company and Harvard Investments, which was for these utility relocations in phases 1 and then in phase 3. Essentially, we would reimburse up to a maximum of $1.2 million in phase A, phase 1, and then $1.2 million then in phase 3. Just a reminder, so we did receive just under $4 million for the sale of the phase 1 parcel. So here you can see all the utilities and kind of the confluence of lines here that are crisscrossing the site. Some of the larger infrastructure, even though all the lines on this map are the same size, there's a very large 36-inch sewer line that feeds into the water reclamation plant, and that's probably one of the largest relocation costs. There's a number of other irrigation lines. There's also some area kind of on the north side where you can see where we anticipated trash removal from when it was a dump site, and a number of other lines that, you know, need to be moved in order to develop a Class A office campus. So under this First Amendment, you know, where the developer and the city, I think, both encountered some challenges with the utility relocations that we probably didn't see initially, and you don't know until you're out there digging up the lines. Certainly COVID-19 and additional safety requirements put additional burden on the developer. They also encountered some sewer material that was no longer manufactured that they had to account for, and the city also had some increased corrosion requirements and maintenance from when we actually dug up the lines. So what we are proposing and what we're looking to do is essentially take the $1.2 million in utility relocation costs that we were going to reimburse in phase 3 and move those into phase 1. So the initial 1.2 would be reimbursed once the utility relocations were complete. This next 1.2 would be reimbursed once the building is complete. So we're still wanting to make sure we get a completed phase 1 building, and essentially the developer incurred costs above, I think, what either of us had anticipated. And furthermore, we would no longer be responsible for any further utility relocation reimbursements. And that's pretty much the gist of this, this amendment.
So, Mayor, in summary, we're not spending any additional taxpayer dollars, and we're ensuring the first building gets completed. In this market, it's important to, I think, get that first one completed as well. With that, questions?
Thank you, council. I'm sorry.
Mayor,
Go ahead, Mr. Freeman.
thank you. You know, I've been out to the site and I've seen all the debris out there, and I appreciate and applaud Lincoln and Harvard for working through the process. And I support the fact that getting this infrastructure done now won't delay anything in the future, and especially putting a timestamp on no further payment until building 1 is completed. And from what I understand, it should be occupied in November of this year. But I don't want to see any delays in the construction and replacement of these piping, because as costs go up, material costs go up, it just puts more pressure on the developer in building these buildings timely. And so, yes, again, I support that, and thank you for addressing this issue, city management.
Thank you, Mr. Heredia, and then Mr. Luna. Go ahead, Frankie.
Oh, sorry. Bill, did you mention that no additional costs will be incurred during this process?
Thank you, Councilmember, Mayor, members of council. That's correct. We are not spending any additional taxpayer dollars. We're simply moving them from a later phase to now to assist with the completion of that first building. The developer will assume all responsibilities for any utility relocation in phase 3.
Okay. And then as far as timeline, why for the phase 1, they're still going through with the same timeline, right? As far as completing phase 1.
I'll give them all the credit in the world. They dug out of a proverbial hole in terms of schedules. They've made up a lot of time. They had to keep the tenant in place. And I think that, as the Vice Mayor just mentioned, they're looking at a November occupancy for their first tenant.
Thank you, Mr. Luna.
Thank you, Mr. Jabdiniak. You just answered my question. So I understand they're moving in November. Since there's no additional cost, I think it's a good idea. This is a great project, and I completely support it. And yes, I would completely support this, and as we move forward. So absolutely.
Thank you. I initially had some reservations about this because, the second payment was supposed to be tied to the third phase of development. And I was wondering if we were, still, if it was wise to give all of the incentives before all of that we had bargained for was accomplished. But the more I've come to understand that, I've come to support it. I mean, this really was quite a lot of questions around, a former landfill with a lot of utilities that were running through the middle of the project. And this utility relocation has to be done for the property to be developed. So even worst case scenario, if the developer walks away after the completion of the first building, it's still important that that this utility relocation take place regardless. So I appreciate Mr. Jabjiniak and others helping me to get answers to the questions I had regarding this, and I'm in full support as well. Council, any other questions on anything on the formal council agenda? Okay, thank you. Seeing none, we'll go to item 2A on our council study session agenda. That's to hear a presentation and provide direction on the 2020 through 2024 consolidated plan, fiscal year 2020 through 2021 annual action plan, and analysis of implementation to fair housing. Michelle, are you there?
She's coming.
I'm here,
Okay.
slowly but surely.
You've been busy. Thank you for, I think you briefed us all on this, and I know this is a project that's really been years in the making, so congratulations on getting it to this point.
Thank you very much. I'm just trying to have technical difficulties here trying to get this up. Okay, here we go. I apologize about that. Thank you very much. Good morning, Mayor, City Council. As I mentioned, I'm Michelle Albanese, and I'm the Housing Community Development Director. And this morning, I will be presenting on the 5-year consolidated plan, which provides a framework for the use of federal funds, which are received from the Department of Housing and Urban Development. I will be providing an overview of the development of the plan and the strategic priorities, as well as goals that were developed based on citywide housing data, demographic information, and public input collected over the course of 6 months. I will also explain what the annual action plan and analysis of impediments to fair housing are and how they tie into the consolidated plan. Finally, I'll be seeking input from Mayor and Council to review, provide direction, and approve the consolidated plan, which will be brought before City Council on July 8th. So what is a consolidated plan and why do we develop one? Annually, the city receives federal Community Development Block Grant, Emergency Solutions Grant, and Home Investment Partnership Grant Program funds from HUD to provide services to the community. Recipients of these HUD funds are required to develop a plan every 5 years, which assesses the needs of the community, goals and strategies to address those needs, and then to prioritize activities that will be funded with federal dollars. And this plan will cover the program years of 2020 through 2024. The analysis of impediments to fair housing and the annual action plan are components of the consolidated plan, in which I'll give you a brief explanation later in my presentation. I do want to point out that the consolidated plan, it does contain the annual action plan, and it also promotes fair housing choices, which we'll talk about in the analysis of impediments. And furthermore, it partners with our housing master plan that we have been working on in draft form to be consistent with the housing goals in the community. So for the planning process, the development of the plan is a comprehensive process over a period of 6 months. Staff worked with a consultant to research and gather data, including demographics, census tract information, housing, transportation, and community development needs. And throughout this process, we also engaged the community to obtain public input. And this included 2 public meetings, a stakeholder meeting, which comprised of nonprofit organizations, community leaders, board members, city council members, as well as a survey that was posted online for 6 months and also available and distributed at public meetings and at Celebrate Mesa. Once all of the information was gathered, the consultant evaluated and developed a draft plan, which was then presented to the public and now being brought forward to City Council. And I just want to take a quick moment to explain how various city planning documents relate to one another and how they are consistent amongst each other with the city's priorities and goals. So we have the city's general plan, which is really comprehensive and guiding principles for future development and goals, which could include zoning and planning, public facilities, housing, and neighborhoods. The Housing Master Plan is a comprehensive plan that includes the existing housing stock and housing needs across a broad spectrum, including all types, costs, and location for housing, which results in really high-level guiding principles for consideration. The Housing Master Plan and General Plan all go through 2040. And then the 5-year consolidated plan will cover housing, community development, social services, neighborhoods, public facilities, and also priorities with estimated funding to be addressed with. So those 3 plans all kind of complement one another with the same types of goals and priorities. And highlighted in red, I've identified the Fair Housing Analysis of Impediments, Annual Action Plan, and our Annual Performance Evaluation Report. Those 3 documents are components that link back to the 5-year plan. So in summary, through the evaluation of the data collected, the survey results, the public input, there are 4 overarching, very general priorities that were identified to guide activities that will address the community needs. So the first one, continue to support human service activities. This is really supporting public service activities and programs that are designed to meet the needs of low and moderate income residents. Investing in public facilities and infrastructure improvements, which include facilities that offer programs and services to low mod income population, including elderly or disabled. They provide youth programs and infrastructure such as in low mod income census tracts. To fund strategies to address homelessness, which could include from street outreach to permanent supportive housing, and increase access to a variety of housing options throughout the city. This could include rental, home ownership, mixed use, so that there's really a comprehensive choice throughout the boundaries of the city. Okay, in terms of objectives and outcomes, this slide shows an example of some of the goals and services that would be provided under each one of the priorities. They're not all inclusive, but they are comprehensive and in the plan. For the human service activities, as I mentioned, youth and senior services, but also workforce development, helping folks continue their education, whether it's gathering education on trade or like a trade school or getting their GED. Could be early childhood education and just generally any type of services that are really provided to low-income folks. For public facility improvements and infrastructures, an example would be the senior center where we're currently investing CDBG dollars in to expand and upgrade the kitchen that's there so that the nonprofit can go ahead and continue to provide more services, especially in the demand of COVID right now as well. It could also include program expansion, so if we want to add on to a facility that provides services. Homeless strategies, all the way from street outreach to homeless prevention, rapid rehousing to get folks from shelter into stable housing, and then of course permanent supportive housing with those wraparound services. And access to variety of housing, we want to make sure that we're not only developing new housing, but we want to preserve the existing housing stock. And we do that through our housing rehabilitation programs, emergency repair programs, And then also fostering rental assistance programs and homeownership opportunities through down payment assistance and other types of matching funds. Okay, so to just give you a quick overview for the annual action plan and how that ties in with the 5-year consolidated plan, it is developed each year and it will specifically describe how the city anticipates using that year's allocation of federal funds to meet the housing and community development needs that are identified in that consolidated plan. And this is really the opportunity each year for the city to evaluate what's current in the community, what those current needs are, and then set specific priorities for those needs. It will explain all the types of activities and programs that are planned and identifies how the federal dollars will be allocated and which nonprofits will be awarded funding. Additionally, it will identify objectives and outcomes. So it'll identify the amount of funding, the number of persons to be served, what that specific activity is, and what the impact is to the community. For the fair housing analysis, this is really about affirmatively furthering fair housing. So this plan is always developed with the 5-year plan, and it goes through the same planning process as the consolidated plan. So we do seek quite a bit of public input. But because we receive the federal funds, we are required to analyze any impediments or barriers in the community to fair housing choice. It will review data from many sources and determines whether there's any barriers that exist and how we can mitigate those barriers. It includes data collection, analysis, and significant outreach in the community and with stakeholders, including nonprofit organizations, specifically that provide housing and housing-related services. It includes a review of the jurisdiction's administrative policies and ordinances, as well as any local conditions that affect the location and accessibility of housing. And once this plan is developed, then we work in conjunction with the 5-year consolidated plan and our annual plan every year to make sure that the goals are consistent and we're addressing the needs and priorities within the community. And just for the last slide, because I have come to you several times over the last 3 months asking for approval of lots of money that's come in, I just wanted to give you a quick overview of what's been presented so far and then what we're asking for approval on July 8th. So on April 30th, we came to the City Council to talk about and get approval on our annual federal funding, which was for 2021, included our CDBG home and ESG funds. And then on May 7th, came back with the annual human services funds for 2021, as well as CARES funding that we received, the emergency solution grant specifically for COVID. On June 1st, formal City Council approval of the ESG COVID dollars, and then a reallocation of CDBG funds that we had currently in our line of credit, and that was for the eviction and mortgage foreclosure prevention, and last but not least, the human services dollars. So on July 8th, we are asking for approval through resolution for the consolidated plan, annual action plan, the analysis of impediments, and then the action plan includes the funding that was approved on April 30th and June 1st. And that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions or comments that you have.
Thank you, Michelle. Council, questions on this item? You know, Michelle, this just seems like such a moving target to me. I know with the CARES Act money that we're utilizing right now and our operation to encourage homeless folks to get off the streets and to take advantage of the housing that we're making available to them. It seems, I mean, there's a lot of resources that are being utilized right now. And I'm okay with that, but it just seems like once the CARES Act funding is gone at the end of this year, you know, we're going to have to make some hard decisions as to how we're going, you know, what our policies are going to be going forward, specifically when it comes to housing homeless. And having alternatives for them, to alternatives to urban camping. So does this? It seems like that all the great planning that we've gone through, it's reflected in this document is great, but what's going to happen on the 1st of January when we have to have different, we have a new reality when it comes to paying for these things?
So very good question. Thank you, Mayor. So this plan does not include any of the COVID dollars. So all of the COVID dollars actually get programmed into the current plan that we're in, the current 5-year plan, and the annual plan. So when we came to council a few weeks ago for the COVID dollars, we did amend that current consolidated plan as well as the annual plan. So moving forward, these are strategies, priorities, and goals that we've identified which do address homeless, but it's not going to cover any of the COVID dollars. So my suggestion is, while this is a planning document over 5 years, that we really need to review annually and sit down and have kind of a strategic planning session that would talk about what's current in the community and how we want to address those needs with the funds that we do get annually.
Okay, thank you. I saw Councilmember Duff. Question, yes.
Yes, I just wanted to make a few comments about the 5-year plan, and I've shared these with Michelle as well as with our planning director, Nana. I would like to suggest that the city looks at our single-family zoning and relaxing that zoning. And what this provides is something like what we have in downtown, where if you are in a residential area, you do have the option of adding on what we call an ADU, or accessory dwelling unit, which is like a mother-in-law's quarters or a guest house or carriage house, whatever you would like to call that. But it gives us a natural access to a variety of housing, fulfilling the need for being able to be multi-generational, having your kids or your parents live on your property, providing those lower rent places instead of having your parent or your kids having to live out of your neighborhood or out of the community. They can live closer. Also gives an opportunity for residents who are struggling or need additional assistance with hanging on to their house to maybe rent it out, a smaller space, and being able to make home ownership more affordable and available by having that little bit of extra income. And it has a mixed income basis of having these alternative forms of housing throughout the community. It's not taking our lower rent or our smaller residences in separated areas. Allows you to stay in your own community, in your own neighborhood without moving. So if I am downsizing or I'm upsizing because I'm the family, I have options right where I live without having to move to a different section of the city. So there's a lot of benefits to naturally address some of our housing needs just by looking at relaxing our single family housing to allow the additional unit where there is space. So I've brought that up as an option to addressing some of this, because building enough affordable or workforce or these units in developments is a long road, and it does not provide a lot of the benefits of having our mixed income and being able to stay in your community. The other thing is we do need to pay attention to our neighborhoods that need more infrastructure, natural infrastructure of shade and repair, and so that our poorer neighborhoods have the amenity, have the infrastructure, and provide a quality place to live. We have to work at addressing a historical redlining that had occurred in our history and do better in those neighborhoods that need the assistance. in order to provide a equitable way of life with the housing and infrastructure in those neighborhoods. As we go forward, we need to, especially with the CARES dollars and our dollars, continue to look at the eviction and mortgage foreclosure assistance that's needed as we proceed in our economic downturn that we have now, and stop homelessness as much as we can by helping those stay in their home or rental unit.
Okay, thank you. Council, other questions or comments on this item? Mr. Brady or Mr. Smith, I noted that this is agendized as to provide direction. Are we being asked to vote on approving these plans at this time in this meeting? Or is this, I guess the timeline that Michelle just went over indicates that this will be agendized for a later meeting?
Correct.
For final approval?
July 8th, Mayor.
July 8th, okay, thank you. All right, council, if there's no further questions on that item, let's go.
Did everybody freeze or just?
I think the mayor froze on us.
No, I was wondering if it was everybody else. Is it just the mayor?
I think so.
He maybe didn't pay his Cox.
Yeah, it's just the mayor. It's just the mayor because everyone else seems to be around.
Okay.
Vice Mayor Freeman, you there?
I'm here, Kevin. Thank you for checking in. Check my pulse.
Do you, if the mayor doesn't join us, do you want to?
I think he's resetting. Just give him a second. I think he just logged off. Let's see if he comes back. Maybe. Siri kicked him off. I think you're good, Michelle. Yeah, Veronica and Lori, why don't you come on up?
So if you get too long of a pause, the music starts? Is that what it is?
Yeah. Vice Mayor, we do have another presentation. You want to wait a few more minutes?
I do. You know, technology is a blessing and a curse. Let's just wait a few more minutes and see if is it okay with council that we do that?
Yeah, that's fine.
It's your corn that's growing, Mark.
It's not waiting for anybody.
The lawnmower at the table? Yeah. Uh-oh, I think he's coming. There he is. Well, that's all we have, Mayor. No, excuse me. Mayor, we have one more presentation. Are we on mute? can't see you very well.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I apologize. I lost my internet connection for a while there.
So Mayor, we're ready for item 2B. That we have a presentation for item 2B.
Thank you. Please proceed.
Good morning, Mayor, council members. I'm Veronica Gonzalez with the Development Services Department, and here with me is Lori Collins with the Office of Economic Development. We will be presenting to you this morning the development agreement for Destination at Gateway. So Destination at Gateway is an 89-acre mixed-use development located at Williamsfield Road on the east and west sides of Signal Butte Road. The property owner has made a request to rezone the property from residential to a general commercial zoning district. With this general commercial zoning district, the site will be developed primarily with regional commercial uses that may include new car dealerships and their supporting retail. The site may also include some multiple residents as a secondary buffer use.
So as you know, the meaningful to communities, a lot of times is when we see those auto dealerships locate into our city. And that's because of the amount of revenue that they ultimately bring. Recognizing this, the city commissioned a analysis called an automotive point analysis in 2018. And that assessment was based on a few critical factors. One of those being that Arizona state legislation dictates that same make dealerships cannot be located within a 10-mile radius of each other. The other important thing that the analysis considered was things that were really important to auto dealers, like the accessibility to the site, the visibility from key transportation corridors, and other important demographic features such as future housing growth and disposable income. What the analysis ultimately found, though, was that the land near State Route 24 and Signal Butte is the only location in Mesa that meets the requirements for an auto mall. This was based on auto clusters in the Southeast Valley and their locations, such as the Santan Freeway, Superstition Springs, and the Apache Junction auto cluster. Based on this, though, the area that we're talking about today is available for most makes, even with that 10-mile radius criteria. You can see in the map on the yellow development zone that this area is available to most makes except for the Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Ford, and Hyundai. And this was based on the Santan Freeway and the Superstition Springs clusters. The green development zone, which you see kind of on the bottom portion of the slide, is available to all makes except Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram. That's primarily because another auto dealer family that we all are aware of in the Southeast Valley, the Earnhardt family, has a dealership in the Queen Creek area.
The existing improvements in the area, as you can see from these photos, are really quite minimal as far as pavement. And currently there are no curbs, gutters, sidewalks, streetlights, or water and sewer main lines. These types of improvements are important to be able to attract development projects that will be of an economic benefit to Mesa. So these improvements are needed to serve the site and will require a significant investment from the developer. So to ensure this location remains attractive to potential new car dealerships, the developer wishes to enter into a development agreement that include economic incentives. So the development agreement establishes certain obligations on both the developer and the city. The developer's obligations include opening the first car dealership by December 31st, 2026. The developer will also be responsible for constructing public improvements for Williamsfield Road, which is along the north side of the property, 110th Street along the east boundary, and an internal auto mall street. The developer will also be responsible for constructing portions of Signal Butte Road that are not completed as a part of a city project. These include pavement, curb, gutter, sidewalks, streetlights, a water line, and storm drain. The city's obligations include, as I had mentioned before, constructing Signal Butte Road from Williamsfield to the State Route 24 by the end of 2022, and also reimbursing the developer for their actual costs on the infrastructure improvements up to a cap of $6 million, so long as the improvements have been completed, that they have made their required right-of-way dedications, and that the first car dealership is open and operating by December 31st, 2026.
So we intend to fund this proposed retail development tax incentive through a reimbursement of 50% of the sales or transaction privilege and use tax that is generated by the new auto dealer sales and those related vehicle service activities. It's important to note the City of Mesa's tax rate is 2%, but there is dedicated funds equal to 0.8%. You can see the breakdown on your slide there. 0.3% is for streets and maintenance, 0.25% is for quality of life, and 0.25% is also for public safety. This reimbursement does not touch those funds. The reimbursement itself is capped at $6 million and only covers the actual costs of those public infrastructure improvements that are completed and then dedicated to the city. The incentive period is 8 years and begins once all of those public improvements are complete, dedicated to the city, and the auto dealership is open and generating revenue. That incentive period concludes no later than December 31st, 2034. Part of state statute dictates that the city, when they're exploring an agreement like this, hires a third party to conduct an analysis to ensure that the proposed agreement meets a couple of critical state statutes. The first being that any proposed incentive raises more revenues than it actually gives during the duration of the agreement, and that the development would not have occurred in the same time or place or manner in the absence of the incentive. Additionally, it required that the sales tax incentives offered to those retail businesses could only be used on public infrastructure that would be dedicated and accepted and controlled by the city. We hired a third-party economist through Applied Economics who completed that study and found that we do, through this agreement, would meet both of those features. In addition to meeting those requirements, we asked her to look further to what the actual revenues may be estimated at. And we were happy to find that this would generate significantly greater amount of sales tax revenues than the total amount of the reimbursement. For instance, one dealership would provide the reimbursement to the developer by 2034, $3.9 million. And the revenues on top of that to the city by 2034 would be $9.3 million. It's important to note that the developer would not reach their cap with just one dealership. With two dealerships, however, the reimbursement to the developer by 2034 would be paid out, reached its cap at $6 million, and the revenues to the city by 2034 would be on top of that $18.9 million. Of course, we would love to see more dealerships than just two, and so the revenues to the city would increase proportionally over that time.
So as you recall, on June 15th, the City Council adopted a notice of intent to be able to consider this development agreement at a future hearing. So this development agreement, along with the accompanying rezoning request, is currently scheduled for the July 8th hearing. And so that concludes our presentation, and we'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
And Mayor, just let me make a quick comment here. I appreciate presentation by Veronica and Lori. Last week in the city manager's update, I don't know if all the council had an opportunity to see it, but a couple of council members had requested that I provide what we call our sales tax heat map of the entire city to show where sales tax is being collected and the intensity of the areas. If you'll notice on that map that was provided last week, you'll notice that the highest concentration or density of where sales tax is collected or remitted to the city is in these locations where we have current auto dealerships, whether it's at Riverview or at Power and Superstition Springs. And so the incentive for us to bring on another car dealership complex was very important in the conversation. Once we had been back in 2018 when we recognized how important, or the study indicated that this location was going to be really the last possible location for the city of Mesa to establish a car dealership, that we begin focusing on this area as we begin marketing this intersection as being critically important and holding it for an auto dealership, auto mall. And so that's why we've led us to today, where we have some significant car dealerships, not only the one you're hearing today, but we have others that are looking at the same area. The challenge for them, of course, is that even the State Route 24 it's not under construction yet. It's planned. It should be under construction shortly. The Signal Butte road is also being considered for improvements. That's included in the future bond election. So contingent upon all those things happening, there's still a tremendous amount of infrastructure and road improvements that need to take place in this area. So this incentive we think is very reasonable. That helps the developer to reimburse public improvements. It ultimately, the city gets back the $6 million in the public improvements, and they get far more than that from the sales tax that will be remitted over the period of time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brady. Mr. Thompson.
And Chris, thanks for mentioning that. I remember when I first got on council, gosh, back in 2015, I had asked for that exact map, I believe, and you had showed it to me, and I was so impressed. I said, "Wow, look how much revenue is generated out at Superstition Springs Mall." And you said, "No, that's not the mall. That's the dealerships around the mall." And it's true when you look at the revenue that's generated off the sale and maintenance of vehicles. It drives a lot of revenue for our city. And so this makes a perfect location. I know we've been working with the zoning attorney and with the property owner now for, probably about 8 months. Mayor, you and I have both been involved in this for about 8 months or so. And to see it moving forward, I think this is a big deal for our city. It continues that revenue drive that really runs our city on the sales tax side. So thank you.
Thank you, Council. Other questions on this item? Councilmember Duff.
Yes, Mr. Brady, I'm totally missed the sales tax heat map. Where is that posted?
So,
Yeah, that was gonna be my question. I can't find it either.
It on the last city manager's update that it was sent out last Thursday, last Thursday. There should be a link. I'm pretty sure it was either that Thursday or the one before, but I think it was last Thursday. I'm getting nods that it was. There's a link in the city manager's update that's sent out each Thursday to that heat map. It's not in this presentation. I'm talking about what was sent to the council on Thursday. I'll see if I can go back.
Chris, the point of the heat map is to show that car dealerships generate a substantial amount of revenue.
The greatest density of sales tax is being collected in those locations. And I will be glad to send it back out again this Thursday if you'd like. But I believe...
I saw the report, but I didn't see a heat map. So I'd be interested in looking at that. Just as our city as a whole and where we're generating sales tax.
Then that's what that does. I will forward that again. I'll just send that directly to council. It won't be in part of the update. I'll just send that out to the council today.
Okay, I just found it. Thank you.
Okay, Council, other questions on this item? I'll just, yes, I'm sorry, Jeremy, go ahead.
Yeah, before you go, John, I do have one question. I just want to confirm the logistics of what we're doing here. So the money that the developer is spending that we're reimbursing them for, if I understand correctly, is essentially money that we would have spent anyways to develop these specific areas had we grown out to these areas. If I understand correctly, we're just expediting that process and allowing them to develop it and then reimbursing them for those costs. But those costs, who would have paid for those costs if it happened organically, say in 5 or 10 years if that area was built out?
Yeah, Mayor, Councilman Whitaker, ultimately, the cost that we're talking about reimbursing would eventually have been the cost of development out in that area. The challenge here is there's not other development out there to share this cost with, and they're the first ones out there. And so there's a lot additional costs, if you would, for the first ones coming out there, and they're coming out there ahead of, as you saw the picture, there's not really anything out there right now. Now, there will be residential developments and others coming out there, but we're allowing them to get reimbursed for what would otherwise be over a period of time developer costs. That is correct.
Okay, got it.
All right. I'll go ahead and weigh in at this point. I know there's still some other comments from council, but I'm not, and I apologize if apparently my Cox link is struggling this morning. So if I turn off, I'm sure Mr. Freeman will continue the meeting. A few months ago, we were discussing some long-term financial planning, and we noted that we had some structural deficiencies in our revenues. And we noted that the city of Mesa currently ranks dead last in per capita sales tax collection. There's various solutions that are dictated when that's the case. The best solution is that we need to increase our sales tax collection. We need to when people in Mesa need to buy new cars, they need to be able to stay in Mesa to do that. When we adopted the model that we still follow that does not have a property tax in the city of Mesa, it was back when the whole region was coming to Mesa to buy cars, and Brown & Brown and Burge Ford and many others were just thriving in our downtown and other parts of Mesa. As those developments, as we lost those dealerships, we created a revenue shortfall for our city. So it is strategically very important that we recapture the retail that has left the city of Mesa, particularly automobile dealers. So this is a great opportunity for us to do that. I think it's important to remind folks that this reimbursement occurs only if the sales tax is collected. So before the auto dealership is eligible to be reimbursed $6 million for building public roads that they then will hand over to the city of Mesa, we have to generate $12 million in undedicated sales tax, half of that which goes into the general fund for the city of Mesa. So as I look at this is a good business deal for the city of Mesa, and it's going to return, there's going to be a sizable return for future generations of our city. So I endorse it and I'm supportive of it. Mr. Luna.
Yes, I had the opportunity to speak to the attorney representing the development. And certainly the family that's involved in this has a long history here in the city of Mesa. So it's a great project. I think this is something that's going to be beneficial, particularly in District 6. It's going to be a revenue generating for our community. So I'm in support of it. I think it's a well planned out project, and I think it should move forward.
Thank you. And council, any other comments? All right, thank you for that great presentation.
Thanks, Lee.
The next, well, I guess we're also we're to provide direction. I think the consensus of the council was to proceed with these next steps, and we see June the 15th and July the 8th will be taking formal action to proceed. So, okay, so thank you. The next item on our agenda for this meeting is item 3. That's to acknowledge receipt of board minutes. Is there a motion to that effect? Thank you, Mr. Thompson and Mr. Freeman. All in favor? Well, we'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Freeman, how do you vote?
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Whitaker.
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Heredia.
Aye.
Thank you, Ms. Duff.
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Luna.
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson.
Aye.
Thank you. I vote aye as well, so that motion passes unanimously. Item 4 on our agenda is a current event summary and reports on meetings and conferences attended. Council, I know you've been busy. Mr. Luna, take it away.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, we had a busy week. Last week, several of us attended the National League of Cities virtual summer board and leadership meeting from Tuesday through Thursday. Thursday morning, Councilmember Thompson and I joined the NLC Board of Directors. Very insightful and moving meeting, so appreciate that. Then over the weekend, I recorded a PSA in Spanish, your proclamation, Mayor. I did that in Spanish for Facebook en Español. And let's see, Monday, I'll let Vice Mayor Freeman talk about that wonderful event over at the Union. Monday, I was also interviewed by Echo, Hispanics Enjoying Camping, Hunting, and the Outdoors. I was interviewed on the Grand Canyon here in Arizona, so that was a great interview. Tuesday morning, I attended a Boca Taqueria. They participate in the restaurant buyout program, and I helped them prepare some of the 500 meals that went to Banners Gardens Children's Hospital. Yesterday, I attended a Hilo and a PAMO constituency board meetings from the National League of City, and we also had a presentation from the REAL program, Race, Equity, and Leadership team, on tools and information how we learn for in more of an inclusive community. So that was quite beneficial. And then this afternoon, Councilmember Heredia and I will be doing Facebook en Español on the city's Small Business Technical Assistance Program, and also a little brief talk on the city's restaurant buyout program. That's it, Mayor.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Luna. Mr. Thompson.
Yeah, last week I had a community and economic development meeting. I'm chairing that board on the National League of Cities. So we came together and were able to have breakout sessions and had really good discussions on a variety of items. And then again, like Councilmember Luna said, we attended the general session as well as the board meeting and legislative meeting. This week I had a drive-through canned food drive out at East Marks Great Park. And I wanted to do a shout out to Tina and from Parks and Rec, as well as the volunteers that came out to help that. And also with Mesa Fire, who came to the rescue. The truck that was from Parks and Rec that was delivering the swamp coolers out there to kind of keep the volunteers and everyone cool, broke down at Guadalupe and Signal Butte, and fire came to the rescue and was able to transport the coolers the rest of the way. So a big shout out to Mary and her crew for jumping in and helping out. And then I met yesterday with Brian O'Neill and his group, Shay Jokum with economic development at the airport, to talk about their east side development that they're looking at doing. Very impressed with what they're wanting to do, and I think I tried to reiterate as much as I could that the market is now. So the sooner that they could get moving on the project, the better. So Mayor, you're going to be seeing that presentation very, very soon on the PMGA board. But it's pretty impressive what their development that they're trying to do, and so I think you'll like it as much as I did. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Freeman.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate the other council members' comments. Ironically, when I was going to the union beam signing, I was talking to Mr. Brady, and I had to abruptly hang up because I had to call a 911 call. There was a structure fire starting just as I was getting on the freeway at McKellips and the 202. And actually, it was one of the businesses. There was fire and flame showing, and I almost turned around, but I couldn't because of the traffic. So I actually called 911, and there was a structure fire. But going on, thank you, Mayor, Council members Duff and Luna and Thompson for coming to the beam signing at the Union at Riverview. We will be forever memorialized there in this infrastructure. I wonder if there's a picture of the green beam itself, but all of us got to sign the beam, and it went into the building. And I think I have a picture of it. I'll bring it up. But thank you for being there. This is a momentous occasion at Riverview for the Union, Lincoln Properties, and Harvard Investment. Again, the occupancy in this building should be in November of this year. And the parking garage is up and getting ready to go. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Freeman. Councilmember Duff, did I see your hand go up a moment ago? Yes.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Last week, I went to Worth Takeaway, which were preparing meals for the restaurant buyout program to provide to Banner Bayview. And I'm sure they're very thankful to have Worth sandwiches for lunch. And we do appreciate those on our front lines within our hospitals doing the work that they do. Also, I attended through the National League of Cities. I'm on the Energy, Environment, and Natural Resources Committee, and we met about the agendas that we wanted to accomplish through legislation to improve our water infrastructure, PFAS, and a number of other environmental issues. Also, this afternoon at 3 p.m., I have an event called Community Conversations, in which I'll be listening to citizens and answering their questions about what's going on in the city to improve our communication. My communication. Thank you.
Thank you. Council, anything else you'd like to share with us under this agenda item? I'll just note that, like Mr. Heredia and Mr. Luna, I'll be taping a Facebook Live webinar this afternoon as well on the city's Mesa Cares technical assistance program for small businesses. I think it's important that we all, there is no cap on the number of small businesses that can participate in this program. So I'm anxious for us to share that news and that information with everyone in the business community in Mesa. And hopefully we can get all or most of our small businesses to benefit in some way from the resources that we're making available through this CARE Act funding. So that'll be at 1 o'clock this afternoon, and hopefully we can all help get that word out. Another event earlier day of this week, I was privileged to attend something called the Bridge Forum put on by Herozona over in South Phoenix. Most of the region's mayors, as well as elected officials like the county attorney and others were there. The point of this gathering was to interface with the African-American community and with law enforcement, and particularly in the context of the George Floyd demonstrations and the stress and anger that we're seeing on a national level. I was pleased to participate in that meeting. It was very productive. We'll be doing a similar meeting before too long in the city of Mesa, working with the Bridge Forum in Arizona and just continuing those conversations. All right, Council, anything else you'd like to share with us under this agenda item? If there's nothing else, Mr. Brady, we're getting close to our break. Can you remind us what our schedule is for the next week or two?
Thank you, Mayor. Just a reminder, Council, we do have 2 meetings scheduled, July 1st and July 8th. And they're Wednesdays, so they're not our typical Monday council meeting days. So Wednesday, July 1st, Wednesday, July 8th. Reminder, please look at the agenda that we send out for July 1st and July 8th. They'll both include an executive session that will precede the council meeting. And so we'll have maybe a little bit earlier start date. Right now, I think both of them are scheduled to begin at 5 p.m. So if you'll just pay attention to that. We'll have both of those. Those will be our final 2 meetings before the break. Then our next study session after July 8th will be Thursday, August 20th. And also a reminder for those on view on the Audit and Finance Committee, a committee that will be following this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brady. Councilmember Duff.
Yes, realizing that we're not going to have, I wanted just to announce to the public that in District 4 will be holding a Mesa Canned Food Drive on Wednesday, July 1st from 8 a.m. to noon at the Mesa Convention Center for non-perishable foods and other items, bottles of water. There'll be a drive-through donation center right in front of the convention center. So please join us next Wednesday, July 1st from 8 a.m. to noon. Thanks.
Thank you. Council, if there's nothing else, is there a motion to adjourn this meeting? Thank you, Mr. Luna. Second by Mr. Thompson. We'll do a voice vote. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Thank you. Any opposed? Thank you. We are adjourned.